I was having like, it sounds strange, but like I was having like heart palpitations a lot, and it kind of freaked me out, right? Because like I'm a young person, like I shouldn't be having like these types of things happening to me. I need to sleep. I have obligations at works. I couldn't drive because I couldn't even focus barely like that day. And put aside everything insomnia and just like live your life in the moment and do things that you enjoy. And eventually, like you'll start sleeping better, and things will resolve.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have Jonathan with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Super nice to have you. And just a little background, I sent this email out to the community and asked people if they wanted to be a guest, and you responded. I'm very grateful for that. And I know you have actually been a student in Bedtime, worked with Coach Chris. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But let's start from the very beginning. How did you start having trouble sleeping?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to start from like the very beginning. So ever since like 4 years ago, I started having like I basically got diagnosed with like anxiety. So kind of like health anxiety, where I was having like, it sounds strange, but like I was having like heart palpitations a lot, and it kind of freaked me out, right? Because like I'm a young person, like I shouldn't be having like these types of things happening to me. And I bring that up because I think that kind of, plays into like this insomnia that I faced moving forward about like around like a year and a half ago is when it really started. So I think that really plays into that a lot. So really the precipitating event, or like what really caused it, was I started like a new job like about a year and a half ago, and it was fine for like the first 2 or 3 months. Like you're in that transition period, you're learning new things. But once I hit like that 3 month period and like the training wheels came off, and like that's when things started to get a little bit stressful. And I remember there was like this one night where I had like a project that I had to do with like my manager the next day. And I was just very anxious about it, like very stressed out about it. And it just like kept like, I just had so many thoughts going on in my mind, just like kind of like overthinking, because like having anxiety, like that's just who I am. Like I tend to overthink things a lot. So, yeah, that night didn't get like any sleep. And I'm like, okay, well, this kind of makes sense because I'm stressed out, right? But then the following night, something else happened in my life where like someone actually like ended up like I was parked in like a parking lot. Someone ended up scratching my car, and I was like, "What is going on here?" And I had no idea. They didn't leave a note or anything. So that same night, I kind of went through the same thing where I'm like ruminating, like, what do I do now? Do I turn to insurance? But it's like, if I don't know who did it, then like, what do I do there? So the second night, no sleep again, and I'm like, this is strange. I don't know what's going on. Like, even in the past on nights where I was like thinking a lot or just like ruminating a lot, I would get like maybe like choppy sleep, maybe like 4 to 5 hours, but I wouldn't be going like 0 hours of sleep, especially like 2 nights in a row. This was like very abnormal for me. So I remember that following day. So this was like that second night I didn't sleep. I had work that day, and I was like, I could go into work, but I'm also not feeling good. I have a headache. So I kind of just went through it, and I just like basically brought up to my boss. I'm like, hey, so like this is going on, may not perform up to standards. I'm just letting you know this. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I need to go to a doctor to get this figured out, because this seems beyond me, and it may be something like medically wrong with me, because at the time I had no idea what was causing it. So on that same day, I couldn't drive because, I couldn't even focus barely like that day, and I was just super sleepy. So I had my parents, come down, pick me up, drive me to like the doctor's office. And when I got in, the first thing he prescribed me was trazodone. He's like, "Hey, so try taking this. It's like the first step in like medication that I think will help, but at the same time, it doesn't help everybody." And then the next step would be moving on to like lorazepam and like Ambien, like some of the other benzos. And I remember like when I heard those names, I was just like, I don't want to take that. Like I remember like I researched a little bit like when I was going through this period, like this 2 days of like sleeping, like problem sleeping out, and I researched like medication that could help it. And I remember reading about those medications and just seeing like the side effects and like what could happen if you took those. And I just did not have any I did not want to take it at all. But at the same time I needed to sleep though. So yeah, that's kind of like that's how it really started off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And you're a great storyteller, so I'm tempted to just say keep going. But there was one thing I wanted to ask about, which was that like 4 years ago, that's when
Mhm,
you started having some palpitations, and that was a concern. And
mhm.
like, did you find some kind of resolution to that, or did you understand why you had some struggle with palpitations, or was that kind of left in a mystery?
So, I really don't have them anymore, and I think a lot of it, like I went to my doctor and he basically told me a lot of it's just overthinking and just like being just health conscious about it. So yeah, it still comes and goes, but like I feel like that like those 4 years ago when I started having that really led to like having like insomnia later on because it's kind of like anxiety related. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that was, yeah, you're making kind of the point that I was making, that
Mhm.
a lot of people can sometimes look back and say like my insomnia started out of nowhere,
Yeah.
but often when we actually take a look, we see that no, there was this kind of like there was these palpitations, which probably
Mhm.
comes from like stress, right? And then we worry
Right.
about them, and then our mind is in a worry state, is kind of looking out for
Mhm.
other things, and then we have some trouble sleeping, and then it's like, oh no, now this is a problem. So I think you said it very like
Mhm.
I think that it was very pertinent of you to mention that as part of the story, and I think a lot of people will resonate with that. Now,
Mhm.
other than that, I was just gonna say, you were in this place now where you gone to the doctor that said, here's the trazodone, but you're already sort of like afraid, like, oh, if that doesn't work, then there's like these kind of heavy duty medications next,
Mhm.
so you're in that mind state, and
Right.
basically just like what happens next.
Yeah, so like I said, I was kind of like, I need to sleep, I have obligations at work. So I basically just said, okay, like I'm fine with trying this trazodone. And he made it clear that like you don't want to take it every day because it does become like it can become addictive. Where if you don't take it, you'll have like what they call like a rebound insomnia, where like you'll take it one day and then the next day you won't sleep. So that's kind of like what I was really worried about. But so I ended up, being prescribed it, went back home, and I still had that anxiety because I'm like, what if this doesn't work? What if this medication he prescribed me doesn't work? Right? Like, what's going to happen then? So, of course, with that anxiety, I think a lot of it played into it. I didn't sleep like that following day when he prescribed it. So I think it was like I don't remember exactly. Like this was a while back, but I think I probably had like 2 additional nights where I got like very little sleep, even though I was taking the medication. So I'm like, I just have to go back to the doctor and see kind of like what the next step is. So yeah.
I mean, that's I've heard this many times, but of course it makes me think of like that. It's a scary proposition where you're like
Hmm.
you're prescribed something and then nothing changes. Then of course we think like, oh no, this must mean something is really wrong with us if the
Hmm.
medication it doesn't work, right? So
Yeah.
so how were you now like taking some time off from work, or how were you functioning during the day at this time?
So it was pretty tough. I mean, I did bring it up to like the upper management, like my boss and everything, that like, hey, I'm dealing with this rough patch of insomnia. I'm, getting help with my doctor for it. But if it seems like I'm not, performing up to like where you want me to be, then that's kind of like why. So I made it like very clear to them, and I felt like it was definitely a struggle to get through a lot of these work days, but I kind of just managed it. Of course, by drinking coffee, which probably isn't the best to do when you're having trouble sleeping. But yeah, so I kind of just got through it as best as I could, like each work day. And then if I had to take like a sick day, I just did it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how
Yeah,
I
you sort of muddled through. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
thanks for sharing that. And all right, so going back to your story here, trazodone didn't really help. You go back to your doctor now. What happens next?
Yeah, so I went back to my doctor, and well, he basically was like, so the next step is going to be to take lorazepam. And just like before, I was very hesitant. And I remember he even said like he had problems, trouble sleeping before, and like he never wanted to take pills. And I was like in the same boat as him, but I needed sleep, like it just was wrecking me like emotionally. I remember like a lot of the things like I love to do, like go to the gym, hang out with friends, like it just got in the way of so many things that I'm kind of like, okay, if I just take it, on occasion when I really need it, I'll be fine. So I just ended up, agreeing with him, and then going home that following, that night and taking the lorazepam. And honestly, I slept great. Like, I think it was like 7 to 8 hours of like pure sleep. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is what I need. So, and I was kind of like in the thought where it's like, if I start to get like consistent nights of sleep, then I'll kind of really like have that confidence back where like, oh, maybe I don't actually need this pill, But it just kept. I still like I would take it one night, and then the following night I wouldn't take it, and then I would have trouble sleeping again. So I kept going through like that cycle, where I would get good sleep, following night not so good sleep, right? And then probably I want to say that lasted where I was like on the razepam probably for like I want to say like 4 or 5 months, where I was taking it like on occasion, right? When I really needed it. But then I like found out that like it was becoming less and less effective, where I was taking it and I was either not sleeping or I was like waking up within like 3 to 4 hours after I went to sleep. So at that point, I'm like, I really don't know what to do, because now this medication isn't working, which is like my crutch. And like, yeah, that's kind of how that went. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I could completely understand. And I think,
Mhm.
You've already shared how this was really emotionally difficult. It was keeping you from doing a lot of things you were doing. And, you were muddling through with the lorazepam, but now that's starting not to help. So yeah, again, I don't have any questions actually. Just take us further. What happens next?
Yeah. So, eventually I, returned. I had to call up the doctor and just be like, hey, so this medication, it was working, in the very beginning, but it's becoming less and less effective. So what do you recommend next? So I went in, that day when I had the phone call with my doctor, and he's like, well, the next stage is Ambien. So it's going to be a little bit more. He basically said like lorazepam is more like it like kind of pinpoints anxiety more versus just sedating you. And he's like, Ambien is going to actually like completely knock you out. And when I heard that, I'm like, well, that's great. But then I also did all that like prior research where I'm like, I don't want to continue to take these medications just because I'm going to grow reliant on them. And like, I just kept reading like about like, if you keep taking these, you're going to end up with like dementia and like memory loss and things like that. So I'm like, I really am glad like you're helping me through this, but I kind of want to turn to like a different approach. And that's what he recommended that I did therapy. So I went I want to say like 3 days later he like recommended like a therapist that I go to. So I started to go to therapy, and kind of like the methods they would like, or like the person I was with therapy with would recommend is kind of like a lot of like sleep efforts, right? Just like, oh, you need to make sure that all lights are off like 3 hours before bed. You need to make sure that like you don't drink caffeine past like a certain time. Try reading a book before you like try to go to bed. Those types of things. And the thing is, I feel like that just kind of just raised my anxiety more, because it's like I'm doing these things not because I like to do them. It's because you're telling me that like these things are like making me sleep less, basically. So it essentially just raised my anxiety, and I just felt like it just didn't help at all. So I remember I went through like 5 sessions with my therapist, and at the very like at the end of like the fifth or sixth session, she's kind of like, so we tried working on like the sleep hygiene, trying to kind of like work through like if you have like any underlying stress, and like I could notice that like what I'm like kind of teaching or like guiding you with isn't really helping. And she's like, so I kind of at this stage I kind of recommend that you may need to turn to your doctor, since you do have like this underlying anxiety, and try to like see if you could take like an SSRI. And that's when I started um taking Zoloft, which was with what my doctor prescribed. Because again, I didn't want to take like the Ambien, because it was essentially that would just knock me out. It wouldn't like get down to like the root cause of why this was happening, which I knew was because my anxiety. So I started taking Zoloft, and at the same time, since I did want to go back to like that more natural method versus just like, taking like these medications, this is where I actually found your YouTube channel. So I was just like searching, best ways to rid yourself of insomnia, something like that. And I remember I came up on your YouTube channel, and like I really love like the teachings that you like gave people that were suffering with insomnia. Like it kind of like resonated with me a lot. Just the whole thing where like you can't be afraid. I love how you say like you can't be afraid of like being awake, because like up until I found your YouTube channel, I was like, I have to be asleep at this time during the night, and if I'm not, then something's wrong. But it's like I should only be going to sleep when I'm really tired, right? Like that's kind of the whole thing with that. So yeah, and then once I found your YouTube channel, started going through your teachings, that's when I also decided to sign up for Bedtime. So with Coach Chris, and he's been super helpful through like all this, because when you're going through like not what insomnia, you kind of feel like isolated. So I definitely feel like he's been a huge help in like if I have like a bad night, just being like, hey, it's okay, I went through like the same exact thing you're going through. You just kind of have to relieve the pressure and not let it get to you, and just keep living your life, and eventually like things will sort itself out. So I mean, I guess that kind of like brings me to where I am today. So I'll be completely transparent. I'm not, sleeping, 8 hours consistently every single night, but I am consistently sleeping like 5 to 7 hours, probably 3 to 4 nights a week. And then maybe like 1 or 2 nights having like a choppy night. But I felt like I was at the stage to like bring forward my story because, I feel like I've made like leaps and bounds since like where I first started. So,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
super grateful for this, Jonathan, for many
Yeah.
reasons. And I have some other questions to you and things that I want to talk to you about. But um, on the note of, you said I wanted to bring forward my story now. I think that's super helpful because oftentimes we have guests that are like, they come on as guests and they haven't really struggled with insomnia for a while. So they seem almost like detached from it. And people in the audience can seem like, I don't know if you
Mhm.
understand what I'm going through, but for
Right.
you, things are more fresh. So it's very valuable.
Mhm.
Um, but as of today, what if you would pick some things that you kind of some teachings or some experiences that were really valuable or helpful to you? What are some things that come to mind?
So, well, I would say the biggest one is just like I mentioned before, like not being afraid of being awake. Because I feel like, especially in the very beginning when I was dealing with the struggle, and this may be like that health anxiety coming up, but like I just felt like if I don't sleep, I'm gonna run into health problems and I may lose my job, right? Like the most radical things I was thinking of. So just having that thought, like, you should not be afraid of being awake and just kind of like, if you are awake, just like kind of, turn on the TV, do something that you enjoy versus like trying to do something that like other people are telling you to do just because like it promotes sleep, like reading a book. I'm not a reader. Like I don't want to do those types of things, right? So I think just like kind of enjoying yourself even when you don't sleep, knowing that like it'll come eventually. That was like the biggest teaching that like has really helped me in this struggle.
That's super nice to hear. And
Mhm.
now I have a follow-up question that I know a lot of people in the community will wonder this one.
Mhm.
And I have kind of an answer, an idea about this too, but I'm curious to hear your version of this, of answering this one. But it is, someone may say like, oh, well, the thing is, how can I not be afraid of being awake if I know that the next day, if I don't sleep, is going to be like totally miserable, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
how would you respond to that one?
So, I would really say, I mean, like I went through the struggle like really badly in the very beginning. Like I was having, like I was saying, like 3 to 4 nights of like practically like zero sleep, or what I think now was kind of like micro sleep, where I was like, it just felt like very surreal, where I was like dreaming, but at the same time, I was like, did I actually fall asleep or was I just like in a daze? But going back to like your question, I feel like I would say your body, like your brain and your body are like designed. I mean, of course you need sleep, but they're designed to like withstand like a lot of like stress and like kind of struggle you're dealing with. And like knowing that like I was able to like go to work and still like keep a job and do like hang out with friends, go to the gym and those types of things, even like when I may have been at like my worst time. That just shows that like, you know, you don't have really anything to be afraid of, right? Like you're gonna get sleep when your body really needs it. And yeah, you just don't worry and it'll come eventually. That's pretty much what I would say.
Now that's incredible. And like that, seeing that we can actually be productive and maybe even have a nice day after
Mhm.
sleeping a little, that's often a turning point when we understand that or maybe even experience that, because then that fear really starts to fade.
Mhm.
Now, I had another question, which was like going back to your therapist. It sounds to me as if that was more like kind of general therapy rather than like, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, right?
Yeah, so it was more of like general therapy. I just didn't know exactly like that's kind of the thing. Like I didn't like I just got recommended this therapist by my doctor. So and I really didn't know kind of like what was going on with me. I didn't really know if I should see like a general like anxiety or stress therapist versus like one specifically for like insomnia. So yeah, that's kind of like why I took that route versus just strictly like for insomnia.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
completely understand. I was just
Mhm.
curious because it didn't sound like the typical CBTI, which
Yeah.
is tricky in its own because of its own reasons. But I
Right.
see, like when you told me what your experience, I
Hmm.
can so see that being actually very discomforting because you've already done a ton of research and you've
Right.
already heard like a million times that like keep the lights low, keep your sound levels
Hmm.
low, and then if you meet like the expert or somebody you
Right.
think of an expert and they say the same thing, then
Yeah.
that's like, okay, I already done that, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So it's like, you're telling me kind of these things to do, but I've tried them and they're not working. And like I said, I just feel like it was just fueling my anxiety because I was doing these things directly to sleep, and not doing things that I like actually enjoy at night, like watching TV. Like I remember when I like first like, in the very beginning, like before I started having insomnia, I would really fall asleep with the TV on or like watching like a sports game or something like that. So it just didn't make sense to me like doing these things because, before I had insomnia, I never had to like, turn off the lights before I went to bed and things like that. So,
Yeah, no,
mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just have my two more questions for you. And one is, um, you know, if you could travel back in time to like those first 3 nights when things were really difficult or that time,
Mhm.
and you could tell yourself something, what would you tell yourself?
That's a great question. So I would say, Hmm. I think the biggest thing I would say is that you're going to be fine and your body will get the sleep it needs, right? So, like I said, like you could survive with, little sleep. I mean, sure, you won't feel, the most focused or the most alert, but at the end of the day, you'll be fine regardless. So I think I would just say like, don't worry. It will sort itself out and you'll kind of, yeah, I think I would just say like, you'll be fine. It'll sort itself out. And because when you put all your attention into insomnia, I just feel like it just grows and grows and grows. Like, and I was always the type of person like hyper focused on certain things. So I think I would just say like, try to like put aside everything insomnia and just like live your life in the moment and do things that you enjoy. And eventually like you'll start sleeping better and things will resolve.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
very nice advice.
Hmm.
And finally, here, I'm curious to hear your response to this one because,
Hmm.
uh, as you kind of pointed out yourself, most of our guests are maybe a little bit more kind of like distance from the struggle,
Hmm.
and then in kind of like in hindsight, like in rear vision, you can point out to things that kind of helped in other areas of life. And but I still, and so I often ask that question, like, have you found that learning from this have learned other areas of life? Now, you may be more in a position where you can potentially speculate on that and see where it may lead you, or maybe you have already seen things that have been helpful. So anyway, my question to you is, do you see, or do you maybe foresee that you may learn things from this that can be helpful in other areas of life?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think the biggest thing is like, I don't know, just going through kind of the struggle, just made me realize that like, you're gonna go through like hard things in your life, and sometimes you may struggle to, be yourself and, do the things that you enjoy. But, eventually, you know, things will work out. So yeah, I think that's how I kind of respond to that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Hmm.
so nicely said. Things will work
Yeah.
out. Like we often
Hmm.
forget that, and we
Yeah.
get so focused in on kind of problem solving something that actually will work itself out when we no longer try so hard to solve it. Right? It's
Right.
kind of a general
Exactly.
life lesson.
Hmm.
All right. Well, yeah, that was amazing, John. Thank you so much for being guest today and sharing with the community. So I'll just thank you for that again, and be in touch. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel.
Bye, everyone. They say that the best things in life are free. And I truly hope that this free video helps you rediscover something else that is free, which is peaceful sleep. If you do find our content here helpful, then please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it with people, because the more views we get, the more people we reach, the more chances of changing lives we have. The thing is, leaving insomnia for good is actually so simple. You can and will rediscover a beautiful life at the end of this sleepless tunnel. So yes, please share it with people, hit the subscribe button, and you will be a big part of leading the change that we so want to see in the sleep universe. Thank you.